What I want to do is I want to ask you a question, and I think everybody here probably knows the answers. Have you ever had a difficult time? So I know just within this small group of people right here, we've got people who are facing some extremely difficult circumstances. Whether it's personal and health related, whether it's family, whether it's marriage related, there's mental health things going on. And if you're a parent, if you're a spouse, if you're a kid, just in this room right here, I'm not going to, so don't worry about it, but I could probably point to any number of people and know what you would use to fill in the blank that's at the top of your sheet. Why is this so hard? Why is parenting so hard? Why is marriage so hard? Why are relationships so hard? Why is high school so hard? Why is college so hard? Why is it so hard? Okay, so this is a question that pretty much everybody can relate to, and maybe you haven't entered into one of those dark times when you asked that question, why is it so hard? Why can't it just be easier? Maybe that's not where you're at right now, but you'll want to pay attention because I can guarantee it at some point you're going to find one of those moments. And so that's the question that we're answering today. Why is whatever it is for you so hard? And we're in Ezra Nehemiah. We've made it into the book of Nehemiah now, and you'll remember that as Ezra started, the Israelite people were captive and they were enslaved basically, and they were almost 1,000 miles away from home. And then Cyrus read that he had actually been predicted to free them, and so he fulfilled on that, and he sent them back, and they came back, and then they started to build the temple, and then they took a little time out because they were discouraged, and then they finished the temple, and then they sent Ezra, and all this is taking dozens and dozens of years, okay? But some of them come back, and they've made a smaller version of the temple. We get to Nehemiah, and Nehemiah is in Susa. He's still not back home. He finds out that the walls are broken down, that Israel's main city, Jerusalem, is destroyed, and he's upset. And the king, he's the cupbearer to the king. Basically, he's the guy who gets to die first if somebody tries to kill the king, but he's also the guy who gets to eat first. He decides he'll actually say what's on his heart, and the king says, "What's wrong?" And he tells him, my city lies in ruins. He says, "Well, what do you want?" And he takes a risk, and he says, I want to go back. I want to fix it. And so the king sends him with a whole bunch of people and resources. And that's kind of where we're at right now. And where we're going to start today is in chapter 2 of Nehemiah. We're going to start in verse 9. And it just says, after this, Nehemiah arrived. Then I came. Then I came. We don't know. It's a long journey, but it's just, boom, then I came. And let's see. Let me just start then by just reading. Okay, there's a few verses. I've put them in your note sheet so you know which ones I'm reading, which parts I'm kind of skipping for the sake, because we're going to cover almost 3 whole chapters today, so obviously we can't touch on everything. But what we're going to see is that Nehemiah finally gets there. He sees what's going on in the city. He wants to fix it. And there are people that are upset that he's there and he wants to do something good. And then when they start to do the work, they get even more upset and they start to mock him and pick on him and threaten him and the people. And you'd think, really, I'm coming back. The king said we can come back, and I'm building a wall. How threatening is that? But apparently it is, and everybody is just against him. And I'm sure at some point he and the Israelite people are like, why is this so hard? Why can't we just be left alone? So let's pick up in Nehemiah chapter 2, starting in verse 9. Then I came to the governors of the province beyond the river, and I gave them the king's letters. Now the king had sent with me officers of the army and horsemen. Okay, so he didn't just show up. He showed up with a little bit of authority. The king sent officers and armies. So it's kind of a big deal. But when Sanballat, the Horonite, and Tobiah the Ammonite servant heard this, it displeased them greatly that someone had come to seek the welfare of the people of Israel. And so then it says he goes and he surveys the place at night, doesn't let anybody know what's going on, and you skip down to verse 17. And then I said to them, you see the trouble we're in now, and them is the other Israelites, how Jerusalem lies in ruins, its gates burned. Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer suffer derision. And I told them the hand of my God that had been upon me for good, and also of the words of the king that he'd spoken to me. And they said, let us rise up and build. And so they strengthened their hands for the good work. But when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite, just Sanballat and Tobiah, bad guys. When these guys heard of it, they jeered at us and despised us and said, what is this thing that you're doing? Are you rebelling against the king? And then I replied to them, the God of heaven will make us prosper, and we, his servants, will arise and build. But you have no portion or right or claim in Jerusalem. So let me just kind of summarize what just happened. Nehemiah shows up. He shows up with the blessings and the power of the king. And Sanballat and Tobiah are not exactly happy. They're displeased. Nehemiah goes and checks out the walls. He's like, whoa, this is bad. We should build. And he tells the other Israelites, hey, why don't we rebuild the walls? And they're like, yeah, this is a good idea. Because he also told them that the hand of God had been on him and the king had sent him with favor. And they're like, yeah, let's do this. And Sanballat and Tobiah look at him, and they weren't just upset and displeased at this point. They mocked him and jeered him. What are you doing? Are you going to rebel against the king? And then he answered and he reminded him, no. That's not it at all. He just told him what God had planned. Okay, let me just answer the question that it is today, okay? It's a simple answer. Why is fill in the blank so hard? Why is marriage so hard? Why is family so hard? Some of you know this because you're coming up on Thanksgiving and you're trying to figure out, is so-and-so going to be there, and what am I going to say to him because I don't like him? You're like, why do holidays have to be so hard? So at some point, everybody kind of relates. Here's why it's so hard. Because you and I are in a battle. Or I already put that up there. Okay, well, whatever. We're in a battle. There. And this isn't just a battle with other people, okay? Your spouse makes you upset, you're not in a battle with them. Your kids do something stupid, you're not in a battle with them. Your parents say no to something that they shouldn't, or they go back on their word, you're not in a battle with them. Your boss is a jerk, you're not in a battle with them. This is a bigger battle. And I kind of want to point out something. Here's why. Here's why we're in a battle. If you go back and you read verse 10. When Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite servant heard this, it displeased them greatly. But why were they displeased? Here's why we're in a battle. Because someone had come to seek the welfare of the people of Israel. Here's why we're in a battle. Because, okay, now there's another option, okay, but I'm working on the assumption that you are here at church because you're either looking for answers or because you've found the answer and you just want to be reminded of what the answer is. Okay? The answer is Jesus. The answer is there's a battle that's been won by a man named Jesus, and he's given us all the strength and the power and the authority to overcome whatever we're facing. However, some of us, why is marriage so hard? Well, some of us, we don't actually fight with God, and by with I mean alongside. We fight with God. And so we fight against him. And so in our parenting, rather than being parents who do not provoke our children to anger, we actually like to, assert ourselves, and I'm the parent, and you're going to do what I want because I'm the parent. And yet we're fighting against God. And so things are hard because we're in a battle. Sometimes, for some of us, it's against God, and so you're going to lose. I'm just telling you. At the other hand, marriage is hard. Parenting is hard. Relationships are hard. Things are hard. Even being healthy is hard because there is somebody who opposes us, and he doesn't want our marriage to represent the gospel. He doesn't want our families to represent good news to anybody, and we are seeking to be someone. Someone's coming to seek the welfare of the people. And so we as believers, somebody who is a follower of Jesus, is seeking the welfare of the people, whether it's the people in your family or the people around you. And that's why it's hard. You're in a battle with somebody who is not seeking the welfare of the people. Why is it hard? Why is Discovery Church this big and not, like 20,000 people? Because it's hard. Why do some of you get upset with me and I get upset with you? Because it's hard. And what we don't want to do is find ourselves on the side of, I'm going to fight against God. At the very least, we want to be on the side that fights for God. That's where Nehemiah is. And so even though he came to seek the welfare of the people, there were people who were opposed to him. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. There's like 4 things I've got today. I'm going to just give you, here's what you're going to run into. And if you have a coloring sheet, there's some obstacles. We're not going to hit all of those, but it was cool how it all lined up. It was like, good, I didn't misinterpret my Bible. So, that being said, my question for you is, are you in this to seek the welfare of the people? Are you seeking what's good for those that you encounter? Whether it's in your family, it's in your church, it's in your neighborhood, your community, whatever it is that you're struggling with, are you actually there seeking the welfare of the people, or are you just seeking your own welfare? I just want things to be better for me. If that's it, you're not going to make it. Okay? Because you're going to run up against these things. But what I want to do is I want to just explain and just point out what Nehemiah did when he encountered the same things you and I are going to encounter. Okay? So the first thing that you'll notice is when, and it's when. Okay, I'm going to finish this sentence. But when you are mocked and despised, what are you supposed to do? Because when you skip down, you see, they were just displeased when Nehemiah showed up. But then he goes and he does this thing and checks out the wall and says, hey, we should fix this, and everybody gets on board. And they're not just displeased. Check verse 19. But when Sanballat and Tobiah heard of it, they jeered at us and despised us. Now, maybe you haven't experienced this much, but I know that there are, again, people in this room because of what you've experienced, and you've decided to try and seek the welfare of the people, trying to honor God in your decisions, and you've had people literally look at you and say, what are you thinking? Why are you doing that? Why won't you act like this? Why don't you just try and take care of things this way? And it's because you're in a battle, and this is what makes it hard, because there's probably a way that seems right to man, and then there's this God way. Why aren't you just doing this with your kid? Why don't you just tell them that? Why don't you just parent them this way? But you know that God has instructed you to parent in a way that shows love and grace and truth and all of these things, and you're like, I just don't think that's it. You've had something go on in your marriage, and one of you have been spoken to by friends and saying, why do you stay with her? Or why do you stay with him? Why don't you just, why do you keep putting up with this? You should get a divorce. You should leave them. You've been mocked or jeered or discouraged. So this is no different. People, when we stand alone, that's what's going to happen. And sometimes it feels very lonely. Everybody's got an opinion, but not everybody has the opportunity to act on it like you do. And so everybody has an opinion about your circumstance. It's kind of like if you were a Cubs fan before this year, what did people do? Good luck. I mean, you're a Cubs fan. It's been 70 years plus. Or, again, what if you're I'm not even going to say, what if you support a particular candidate during this election season? I guarantee that there are people on the other side, or who maybe aren't on either side, and they're like, why do you support that? Why do you support that? And you're mocked, and you're jeered for trying to stand up for something that you believe in. Okay, but how did Nehemiah respond? Because, look, when you're mocked and when you're despised, what do you do? What do you do? Well, what did he do? Verse 20. Then I replied to them. This was his reply. The God of heaven will make us prosper, and we his servants will arise and build, and you have no portion in this. You don't have any portion or part. You don't have anything to say about it. You don't count. Now, I don't know how that would go over when one of your friends is saying, why don't you do X, Y, Z different? And you're like, no, here's what I'm going to say. The God of heaven is going to make me prosper, and you have no part in this. I don't know how that would go over. I'd be interested to see it, though. Because I'm pretty sure if you were to say something like that, in a difficult circumstance that you're facing, you're like, my God is going to make me prosper, and you have no part in this. They'd probably have not much to say. And you'll notice that neither did Sanballat or Tobiah. They didn't have much to say. So, when you are mocked and despised by others, what do? You need to know. Know that you know that you know what you are ultimately fighting for. That's funny, forers. It happens. We're human. It's just for. But you need to ultimately know what you're fighting for. And in Nehemiah's case, he knew he came there with the blessing of the king, but he came there at the direction of God. Like, I'm here to build the wall because we are a despised people, and God does not want us, his people, to be despised. And so we need to fix this because God has given us a task to lift him up. And so we're going to do that in the middle of all of this. I know why I'm here. Okay, do you know why you're fighting for your kid? Do you know why you're fighting for your marriage? Do you know why you're fighting for relationships? Do you know why you are enduring pain and suffering? Do you know why you don't know what to do in certain circumstances, but it's okay? Because you know what you're fighting for. Ultimately, we want God himself to receive the glory. And so things are hard because you're in a battle. What do you do when people make fun of you for fighting that battle? Just remember, just know what you're ultimately fighting for. And so, hey, look, there are things that happen in my family, and there's things that we've done that maybe you wouldn't have chosen to do. That's fine. I know why I'm doing the things that I do. I think the best birthday present I got this year was when one of my sons wrote me a birthday card, because, we don't waste $4 on a card. We just write them. We go find some construction paper, fold it in half. Hey, happy birthday. Open it up. Here's something nice. Okay? But that was literally the best birthday present I got, because here's what it said. Happy birthday, Dad. Thanks for saying no, because I know that you love me. And thanks for the times that you say yes. Okay. And I say no because I know what I'm trying to do. And I get made fun of by my kids, just like any parent does. And by made fun of, they're not exactly disrespectful. But they do let their feelings be known. Okay? So, know what you're fighting for. Basically, what team are you on? And you can look in Colossians chapter 3. It's in your notes. At least it's referenced if you're following along on your version. It basically says this: whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. The wrongdoer will be paid back for the wrong that he's done, and there is no partiality. Like, what you're doing matters. Just know that. And so when life is hard, do not be surprised that you're going to encounter people that are opposed to you, that they mock you, that they jeer you. I can't express, there's no real good English words on how strong the opposition was. Okay, but it's almost like Sanballat and Tobiah were bullying, Okay? So they were writing mean things on Nehemiah's Facebook page. They were retweeting mean pictures. They were making memes of Nehemiah and putting him in funny positions and saying stupid, mean stuff about him. Like they were just to the point where, in a lot of cases, and this really happens, Nehemiah may have wanted to kill himself. Because that's the extent. It's not just, oh, you're dumb. No. They were mocking and jeering him relentlessly. That's the sense of what that word is. Okay, it's going to happen. So, you need to know what you're fighting for. You might even have those same arguments with yourself. Why am I so stupid? Why am I still going through this? Why am I still fighting? I'm so dumb. I can't believe I trusted him, her, them. And you got hurt again. Okay, I'm telling you, that kind of stuff comes from the enemy because you are in a battle, and that's what makes it so hard. So, that's not the only thing that happens. You get to chapter 3, and all of chapter 3 is literally, and we're not going to read it. There's a few verses I might pick out for you. But all of chapter 3 is basically, hey, we're going to build the wall, and it's just a list of names and where they built. Just look at verse 1. Then Eliashib, the high priest, rose up with his brothers, the priests, and they built the sheep gate. They consecrated it and set its doors. They consecrated it as far as the Tower of the 100, as far as the Tower of Hanal. And next to them, the men of Jericho built. And next to them, Zakur, the son of Imri, built. It just goes on and on and on. Okay, kids, I've got a question for you. Anybody ever picked on you? Might have been me. Anybody ever picked on you? Yeah, Hannah's definitely, yeah. She's sitting next to her brother. Say that again. Ben, your mom picks on you? Really? Don't tell too many secrets. Don't tell too many secrets. Okay, so the answer to this question is yes. Bad things happen. We sometimes get picked on and we notice stuff. But do you know what it is that we notice? Like, if you can answer yes to that question, it's because you have been able to notice that things are not the way they're supposed to be. If you're a kid and you know that you've been picked on, if you're an adult and you know that you've been picked on, if there's a certain flaw or something that happens in your personality, it's maybe in the way that you dress yourself, it's the things that you do, the places you go, the friends you keep, whatever it is, and people are like, oh yeah, that's that guy. He's always this, she's always that. Have you ever noticed this about him? The reason that it bothers you, whether it's you being picked on or you've noticed it in somebody else, is because you know that's not the way it's supposed to be. Nehemiah recognized that, hey, look, this is what's going on in Jerusalem. This is not the way it's supposed to be. And so he decided to do something about it. Okay, things are hard because we know that's not the way it's supposed to be. Marriage is hard, and we're upset about it because that's not the way it's supposed to be. Parenting is hard. That's not the way it's supposed to be. School is hard. Okay, that one doesn't count. That's the way it's supposed to be. But we need to ask ourselves what Nehemiah did. Okay, so we get to chapter 3. And what should happen where you recognize brokenness? Because this is what brokenness is. Brokenness is just you and I, somebody recognizing that that is not the way things are supposed to be. And so some of you may have experienced it before where my wife or I have come up to you and say, are you okay? And you'll be like, yeah. And then I'll look you in the eye and I'll say, are you really okay? Because there's just this something about what's going on. It just doesn't look the way it's supposed to be. And a lot of times when we figure out what that is and you share what that is, if you do, it turns out that it's the very thing that Nehemiah noticed in Jerusalem. Something's broken. Something is not the way it's supposed to be. Look, Nehemiah came to seek the welfare of the people and to restore what was broken. Something interesting. Again, we're not going to read all of chapter 3. You might want to just write this down, though, so you remember it. When it says the high priest rose up and they built, okay, the word built or build, it's used, 6 times in this chapter. The word repair, they made repairs, is used almost 36 times in this chapter. So what do you do when you recognize and you see that there is some brokenness? Here's what you do. You go to work and you build. The word there actually, it means build, but it doesn't just mean build with new material. It means like build, like rebuild. You build. It's kind of like when you've got a little kid and you play blocks and they go, I knock it down, and they knock it down. What do? You put it back up. You rebuild. You built a tower, but you've actually rebuilt a tower about 100,000 times, depending on the kid. Okay? Somebody needs to win that battle. But you rebuild. And repair. They repair. Okay, the word there for repair, it obviously can be meant repair, but it also carries a sense of strengthened. Okay? A sense of strengthened, like you're going to rebuild, you're going to take what's there and you're going to rebuild it, and then you're going to make it stronger. And so when you've faced something difficult and you've entered into brokenness and you've noticed what's going on, whether your body's broken, your relationships are broken, your job's broken, your outlook's broken, your attitude's broken, something's broken, how did Nehemiah respond? Hey guys, we need to rebuild. We need to strengthen what's been torn down. You can do the same thing, which is what hope looks like. It doesn't matter how bad you've messed up. It doesn't matter how bad things have gotten. I think we can learn from Nehemiah that, look, all it takes is an understanding of what we're ultimately called to do. And then we do our part. We rebuild and we strengthen what's already there. So, I want you just to notice a couple things too, okay? Because again, I've talked about how this can be lonely. I'm going to show you just a few things. Look in verse 1. In verse 1, I've read it. It says, Eliashib, the high priest, he rose up with his brothers, the priests, and they built at the sheep gate. They consecrated it. They set their doors. They consecrated it as far as the Tower of the 100, as far as the Tower of Hanel. Okay? And you'll see this about a lot of other people, how they did some work. Here's what I want you to notice, okay? It's not in your notes, but you can write it down if you want. When it comes to having to rebuild and to strengthen things that are broken, some will. Some will join you. Some people will want to be a part of it. Some people will want it to be better. Laura and I constantly run into people, and I will put in as much effort as you're willing to put in to fix whatever it is that's broken in your life. But I'm not going to work harder than you. So some will. Then I want you to look a little bit further. Oh, and remember this guy, Eliashib? We're going to find out about him later. He might have done some of the work, but he wasn't the best guy. Okay, well, not later today. Later in the weeks to come, he kind of messed up. Okay, but some will join in the work and try and repair the brokenness. But then go down to verse 5. Okay, these people are working. And next to them, verse 5, next to them, the Tekoites repaired. They strengthened. But their nobles would not stoop to serve their Lord. Some will, some won't. Some are willing to join in the work and get in the mess and fix the brokenness, and they'll strengthen it, they'll repair it, they'll rebuild it. Some won't. And that's okay. There's going to be things that happen in your family. Some people want to be a part of it, some don't. You can't make them. There's going to be things that happen in this church. Some people want to be a part of it, some don't. And that's okay. There's going to be problems that you might want to enter and you want better for them. And they don't. That's going to happen. But where we see brokenness, we want to seek to build and to repair. One other thing. Go to verses 19 to 20. 19 to 21, actually. I'm just going to read it for you. Next to him, and this has been going on the whole time. Next to this guy. Next to that guy. They built from here to there. Okay, verse 19. Next to him, Ezra, the son of Jeshua, ruler of Mitzvah, repaired another section opposite the ascent to the armory at the buttress. After him, Baruch, the son of Zabai, repaired another section from the buttress to the door of the house of Eliashib, the high priest. We heard about him. And then verse 21. After him, Meremoth, the son of Uriah, son of Hakaz, repaired another section from the door of the house to Eliashib, the end of the house of Eliashib. Okay, some will, some won't, and some will do extra. And what I want you to see, some of you, depending on what translation you're using, I believe it's in verse 21. Meremoth, the son of Uriah, repaired another section. It doesn't just say repaired. there's a word that's kind of left out there, but in some translation it includes it, and it says zealously repaired. In other words, he didn't just do the work, but he did it as well as he could. It wasn't just, oh, I've got to do this. You know, like some of us who are parents, we do with our kids, like, I can't believe I have to punish them. Sometimes you rejoice in that. Other times you're like, oh, why'd they make a scene? There's so many people watching. But this guy zealously repaired. Some will, some won't, and some will give it all they've got, and they'll even do extra. So let me tell you a story about somebody, okay? This guy right here. You can probably guess his last name because he's got a name tag. Corey, you're not related to him, are you? His last name's Mills, probably. His last name's Mills. This is Travis Mills, Staff Sergeant Travis Mills. Travis joined the Army, and he served in the 82nd Airborne, and he was on his third deployment to Afghanistan about 4 years ago. And what happened while they were there, you know, there's rules of engagement. They actually watched the enemy planting IEDs and stuff, but because they weren't shooting at them, they couldn't shoot back. And, well, obviously you can't shoot back if somebody's not shooting at you, but basically they couldn't do anything about it. They're walking in an area where they know that there are IEDs, and Travis steps on one and was literally blown to pieces. Now, Travis had a wife and a 4-month-old daughter. You might think that's bad news, but this is Travis, just 1 year later. Not even 1 year later. When I say he was blown to pieces, he lost both legs and both arms. One of only 5 quadruple amputees to serve and survive. And I want you to notice something, because Travis was in a difficult, hard circumstance. He was literally in a battle. He literally experienced brokenness. And what you see there is a picture of somebody who said, that ain't over. I'm going to join in the repair. I want to be a part of the rebuilding. I want to strengthen what's going on. Travis has a foundation called the Travis Mills Foundation. He's obviously still got a daughter and a wife. He was broken, but he wasn't taken out. Some of you are facing circumstances, and look, everybody's got their own issue. I'm not trying to compare what you're going through to what Travis went through, but here's a guy who understood what Nehemiah did and what the people of Nehemiah did. Some things are worth fighting for, and it's not going to be easy. You can improve. So this is Travis just this month, okay? There's his wife, his daughter Chloe. He's rebuilt himself. He's strengthened himself. He walks, he snowboards, he bikes, and he goes around and he helps others. Does anybody know who Mike Rowe is? Mike Rowe's the guy from Dirty Jobs. Okay, Mike Rowe interviewed Travis. And he said, look, dude, your story is amazing. Your attitude's amazing. Like, he's smiling. I have no arms and legs, but I'm happy. Like, whoa. And this is just 4 years ago. And so Mike Rowe hears the story and he's talking to him. He's like, why do we not see you, like, with the Wounded Warrior Project and stuff like that? Like, people, like, why haven't we heard about your story? He's written a book, by the way, so you might want to write that down. You can go, I can't remember what it's called. Unbreakable, probably. But he says, why don't we see you in these PSAs for Wounded Warrior? Here was his answer. I'm not wounded anymore. I'm just a guy with scars living life. We can learn a lot from Nehemiah. I think we can learn a lot from guys like Travis, too. So where you find brokenness, because it's going to happen, because we're in a battle, that's where we need to look to build and repair. So, obviously, Nehemiah is going through this. The people are going through this. And the people the Sanballats and the Tobiahs are not very happy about it. They're upset that they're building a wall, that Nehemiah had come to seek the welfare of the people. So, Nehemiah chapter 4. Just going to read 6 verses to start with. Nehemiah chapter 4, verses 1 to 6. When Sanballat heard that they were building the wall, he was angry and greatly enraged, and he jeered at the Jews. Now he's not just mad at Nehemiah, he's mad at all of them. And he said in the presence of his brothers and of the army of Samaria, okay, so he's, threatening them. What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore it for themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they finish up in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of rubbish? The burned ones at that, which, by the way, I didn't know, how do you burn stones? Okay, well, they used limestone, and I didn't know this, but I discovered it when I was studying, that if you burn limestone, it makes it weak. So they've got burned stones there, and they're building with burned stones, some of them, or at least they're, doing something to try and fix it. And he's like, what, you're going to use weak material? Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him, and he's like, and I just picture this. It's kind of like one guy yapping, and then another guy's, yeah. Tobiah says, yeah. What they're building, if a fox goes up on it, it will knock it down. Okay, you guys know that foxes are kind of like, they're sly and they're light-footed and stuff. So he's literally making fun of the quality of the work that they're doing. And here's what Nehemiah says. Hear our God, for we are despised. Turn back their taunt on their own head. Give them up to be plundered in a land where they are captives. Do not cover their guilt, and let not their sin be blotted out from your sight. For they've provoked you to anger in the presence of the builders. He's basically saying, beat them up. Show them a thing or two, God. And then verse 6. So we built the wall, and all the wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. Okay, so here's basically the question. They've been called names, and what are you supposed to do when you are ridiculed? Okay, and it's very similar to what happened at the very beginning just to Nehemiah. Now it's happening to everybody. They're feeble Jews. Your building material is not going to stand up. The job that you're doing is pretty pathetic. Like they're just literally getting beat down. I want to say something. Okay, you've heard the saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, right? True or false? False is what a lot of us will say. Okay, I'm going to put it this way. Words can hurt us, but mere words do not get to harm us unless we let them inside and they poison us. Now, let me say that again. Words can hurt us, but we do not have to allow them to harm us. That only happens when we keep them in and allow it to poison us. So here's what that means. Kids, any kids here ever gotten a shot? Did you have to go to the doctor and you got shot? You ever gotten a shot? Yeah. You like it? Okay, you're a weird one. My daughter likes it. So when they give you a shot, they take a needle, okay? And lucky me, like I have low testosterone, so I'm like without shots, I'm practically a woman. And so, lucky for me, my wife gets to give me a shot. And she gives me a shot right in the butt. Okay? Because that's apparently where they put it. It's my biggest muscle. See, here's the deal. You guys can say whatever you want, but I know this sermon, and I know what to do when you're ridiculed. I'll tell you in a minute. Okay, but anyway, she gives me a shot. And when she does, I remember the first time, and she took out, because we'd gotten, she's a nurse and she works with other doctors, nurses and stuff, and somebody we had a needle, but this sucker was like a pen. I'm like, you're not doing that. And luckily she wasn't. Like, she got a smaller one, but it has to be apparently a bigger gauge because it's like thick stuff. Okay. But here's the deal. When she gives me my shot, and when you get a shot, either you're a kid, you get your tetanus shot or you get your flu shot or whatever it is, it hurts. But just for a little bit. It doesn't harm you. It's for your good. But what would happen if instead of testosterone or a vaccine or some other kind of medicine, if what they put in it was poison? It would not only hurt, but it would also harm because it poisoned you. Okay, so don't think that ridicule isn't supposed to hurt. Don't think that when people make fun of you, that they are pointing out, that they're mocking you, and all the things that happened to Nehemiah and now the Israelites, that it's not supposed to feel bad. It is. And it will. But it's only if you take those things and stew on them and roll them around on the inside and you take it in that you allow it to poison yourself. Some of you have been told things by people and it's just words. There are people that have been told, you're ugly. And it was just at the right time and the right moment or whatever, and they've carried that around for years and they think they're ugly or they're fat or they're stupid or they're whatever. And because somebody told you, because somebody said that you can't sing, that you can't, whatever it is that you do, or you don't do because somebody one time told you, you can't do that. You don't know anything. How could you be so stupid? And it hurt when you heard it, but you've carried it around because you've put it in and it's poisoned you from the inside, and so now you don't smile anymore. You don't believe that you're actually worth anything anymore because you've been told that you're not. Stop it. What are we supposed to do when something like that happens? When you are ridiculed, what are you supposed to do? Well, here's what Nehemiah did. We already read it. He prayed, right? The first thing he did in verse 4. Hear, O God, we're despised. And he prayed for their destruction and their demise. Like, how does that square with being somebody who is supposed to love your enemies? Look, these people were opposing God, which makes them enemies of God. And when you know what you're ultimately supposed to be doing, you don't have to pray happy thoughts. You don't pray that they'd succeed. You say, this is not what God would want. This is not who God would bless. I don't want you to be blessed either. God, take out your enemies. But he didn't just pray. And a lot of us, we do that. We're like, we've been hurt, and some of us, even as parents, we've done this. Our kids have been made fun of, and something's come up, and we're like, this isn't good. We need to do something, and we don't know what to do because we don't know the people. It's anonymous, and whatever's happening, and we're like, we need to pray, and we do that, but that's it. That's not it. Nehemiah didn't just stop there. Nehemiah would also, in verse 6, went back to work on the wall, and they built it to half their height. So here's what that boils down to. I already showed you your blanks. Focus on the task ahead. In other words, you got work to do, but also on the power behind. So you can pray. There's where the power comes from, but God doesn't just sit there and go, I guess I'll do everything now. You know what he didn't pray for? He didn't pray that God would build a wall. Why? Because that's a stupid prayer. You know why it's a stupid prayer? Because God already made wall builders. So Nehemiah and all the Israelites were supposed to do their work, and some did, some didn't, and some do extra. See how it all works together? So, ask God to do his part. You pray. And this is what we're doing about our building here at Discovery. We're praying, hey, God, we need you to do your part. We need you to show us, provide for us, something like that. And there's some things that God, it would appear, it's happened. He's kind of taken care of it. And then there's some other things like we need to do our part. We need to go find out how much this is going to cost and how much that's going to cost and figure out what the budget is and is this going to work and is that going to work. And so we're trying to figure those things out, and we should know more in a couple weeks. Right now we don't know enough. But we can't just say, hey, God, give us a building. It's a dumb prayer. Because if we're not looking, how are we going to know if that's it or that's it? If we're not asking, how are we going to know if they'll say yes or they'll say yes? We got to do our part. So ask God to do his part, and you do your part. You're struggling with something that's hard? God, will you help me? That's a good prayer. And then do whatever it is that you need to do. Okay? Focus on the task ahead and on the power behind. All right. Almost done. Because there's 4 things that you're going to encounter, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of running long, but this is just good stuff because I think we can all relate to it. So ultimately, the wall is built to half its height, and then you can see, if you read through this, that they're very upset and they're threatening them. The army's there again. And the opposition increases. Basically, you look at verse 7, when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Asherites, they heard that the repairing of the walls of Jerusalem was going forward and that the breaches were beginning to be closed. In other words, there's progress. They were very angry. This is all they do. They're just the angry people. And they all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and to cause confusion in it. And verse 9, and we prayed that we prayed to our God, and we set a guard as protection against them day and night. Look, the people are coming against them. Now they've assembled others to come against them. Now they're threatening their very lives. If you're an Israelite who's working on the wall and you're already a cast-off people, you're going to start to get a little bit discouraged. You're going to start to get. This is one of those things where you might know that you're right, but you just don't know if you can hang on any longer. It's like somebody who's witnessed a murder, but you know if you actually say what you saw, that guy has a lot of resources and he might kill you. Or he's already threatened to kill your family or something. You're just like, I don't know if I can do that anymore. You're discouraged. You're scared. You're threatened. I don't know if I can do this anymore. This is exactly where the Israelites were. You look at verse 10. In Judah it was said, the strength of those who bear the burdens is failing. There's too much rubble. By ourselves we're not going to be able to do it. Like this, we can't do this. They're getting discouraged. What do you do when you're discouraged? Okay, well, Nehemiah has a little pep talk. And in verse 14, he says, I looked and arose, and I said to the nobles and to the officials and to the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your daughters, your wives, your sons, your houses, your homes. When you're discouraged, here's how you get through. Here's how you press on. You remember the Lord and what's at stake if you give up. You don't want to keep loving that kid because they keep making stupid choices and making your life as a parent or as a family miserable. What do? Remember the Lord who is great and awesome. He doesn't want anyone to perish. Like he loves them more than you do. He wants better for them than even you do because he knows more than you do. Remember the Lord and what's at stake. If you give up on him, who's going to love him? If you give up on this marriage and your family falls apart, what's going to happen to them? If you give up on whatever it is that you're trying for, whatever it is that you're trying to get through, if you stop seeking to improve, what's going to happen? What's at stake? Remember the Lord and fight for your brothers and your sons and your daughters and your wives and your homes, for your city, because Nehemiah came to seek the welfare of the city. So let me just end by saying some of the things that are at stake. Okay? We, Christians, Discovery in general, we're in a battle. You know that. And there are people around us and even among us that are struggling because life is hard, because marriage is hard, because parenting is hard, because work is hard, because school is hard, because finances are hard, because whatever it is, fill in the blank is hard. It's just not easy. Church is hard. Pastoring is hard. Being a friend is hard. Deciding who to vote for is hard. Everything's hard. But what happens if we don't seek the welfare of our city? If we don't seek to actually stay here and fight? If we don't do the work to build and repair the brokenness? If we don't actually focus on the task ahead and the power behind us? What if we don't do that? What if we don't remember the Lord who's great and awesome? What if we don't do that? Here's what's going to happen. More suffering, more brokenness. There's going to be people who give up. There's going to be people who lose out. And you know what? Those people who lose out the most are probably going to be us. Because there's a blessing in watching God work through us. We want to see people experience God using them in any situation. Maybe you're the one who gets to bring hope. And so you see somebody around here, you don't know what to say. Fine, go give them a hug. Just tell them you're praying for them. Tell them I love you. Hey, if you need anything, I'm there for you. But don't just ignore it. Will you remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and then fight for your brothers and your sons and your daughters, your families and your homes, your wives. Will you fight? Because if we don't, who's going to? I mean, you know, because it's not just people here in this room. It's people in your neighborhood. It's people at your work. You know what they are struggling with. And a lot of them are struggling alone. Will you fight? So what do we learn from Nehemiah? There's going to be plenty of people who don't like what you're doing. You're going to feel like you're alone. You're going to notice that there are things that are broken, but they don't have to stay that way. And if you're one of those people who feels like giving up, maybe you've already given up, let me just tell you that there's somebody who came and did this for you. His name is Jesus. He's already rebuilt. He's got fresh stuff that he can put together in your life to make whatever it is that's broken better. He's already chosen to fight for you. And so I pray for this church. I pray for these people. And I'm going to do that right now. You can join me and pray for your own issues, because I'm just going to pray in general. So, Father, I thank you for loving us in an active way, for enduring the scorn and the ridicule and the jeering and the mocking and the despising that came when Jesus walked this place. You did that for us because you knew that it was worth it. You knew what you were fighting for. You remembered how great and awesome the Lord was. And so I thank you for that. And Father, if there's anybody here who hasn't experienced that in a personal way, God, I pray that they would experience the hope that you have for them. And if there's people here who have yet to really recognize that you use people to rebuild things, God, I pray that we would get on board, that we would work right alongside you to rebuild what's broken and seek the welfare of the people in this room, the people in our families, the people in our community. Father, would you give us an opportunity and then help us recognize when you've used us to make a difference. I pray that in Jesus' name.